Hi, this is Nori with My Service Depot. Please note that the content you're about to view is meant as a generalization of the Smart Service job process as a whole. It's not directed at any specific industry or your company's personalized process. However, by learning the basics of Smart Service, we hope to give you a head start on using our software. If you would like to see a demonstration of a specific function or process in Smart Service, you should consider visiting us at smartservice.com/webinar and joining the next live event or watching one of our previous recordings. You can also join our weekly QA webinars to speak with your trainers directly. You can sign up for these weekly QA webinars at smartservice.com/knowledgebase. This series will be divided into 5 segments to ensure the best learning experience. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please give us a call at 888-518-0818. If you're interested in purchasing additional live training, please let us know. All of the names, addresses, and contact information displayed in this video are purely fictitious and for demonstration purposes only. Any references to any real entity is purely coincidental.
Hello all, this is Nori from Smart Service, and today I'm joined with Jess Spalding.
Hello.
And we're going to be working on the Quick Start Guide video for iFleet here today. If you guys have been watching our previous Quick Start Guide videos, they mostly relate to Smart Service. They're pretty straightforward. With this one here, we want to keep this one a little bit more light. We want to go through iFleet for your technicians, so this is definitely a great film to have them watch. Before we get started here, just to give everybody an idea of what's going on, iFleet is available on both Android and iOS phones and tablets. On the right-hand side of your screen here, you have an iOS device. This is an iPad. On the left-hand side, you have an Android tablet. So there aren't many differences between the different versions. We will keep them both on the screen so you can look at the appropriate version for your business. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into how to use iFleet today. Once we've got the application open on our device, we want to go ahead and hit the sync button at the top left for iOS and the top right for Android. This sync button here will get the latest information from the office. So if we synchronize our devices, we're making sure we always have the most up-to-date and recent information about our jobs. If something was canceled, rescheduled, something was moved, or if you had information on your tablet you need to send back to the office, you want to hit that sync button to get that done. So once again, you want to sync before you begin the day and before you begin any job. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the 3 horizontal bars opposite our sync button. And this is going to allow us to access a couple other features. Jess and I can go ahead and clock in for the day. And under that, you see we have other options here. We could begin lunch, begin break. We could track fuel purchases for the services there. So when you get started, sync your device, clock in for the day. Throughout the day, you can use the rest of these options. In both versions of iFleet, we're going to have one other important feature here, and that's going to be the Jobs to Do and Completed Jobs categories here on the sides of the menu bar. The Jobs to Do section is any job that's been assigned to you that you are either in the process of working on or you haven't started yet. Once you finish a job, it's going to move to that Completed Job section. Now, that doesn't mean it disappears from your device. Those jobs that you guys finish will remain in the Completed Job section until the office posts them over to QuickBooks. So you'll see these options here as long as the office hasn't completed those jobs yet. So if you make a mistake, if you need to go back in something, not a big deal. You just go to the completed job section here. But Jess and I are going to stick in the jobs to do section for now.
All right, so now that we have taken a look at our dashboard options there for clocking in for the day and getting everything started, the next thing that you want to do, like Nori said, is jump over to your jobs to do list. So that's going to be the summary of all the jobs that you have for that day, for that week, whatever your guys' date ranges are set to by the office for how far out you can see. So inside of here, you're going to have a list of all your jobs that are scheduled for you. They're going to be in chronological order based on the date and the time. And kind of at the top there, just underneath of your menu and your sync buttons, you're going to have a search option. So if you're looking for a very specific job, you can start there, type in a name and job number, whatever you need to find, and that'll pull up the information from the list if it's in there. And outside of that, each device is going to have its options for the little thumbnail map. So that's going to give you your driving directions to the job site that you have to go to. For the Android device, you just tap directly on the little guy wearing the hard hat in your thumbnail. For the iOS device, you're going to be using the little push pin there, and that is going to actually show another button for you. So On the Android side, you just tap it once. It'll take you right over to your Google Maps. For the iOS, you're going to have to hit that little blue navigate button that popped up there on that second job. So just kind of keep that in mind. Whenever you're looking for the directions here, you can either do it from the job's to-do list, or you can do it from inside the job, which we'll take a look at here in a little bit. Outside of your thumbnail map for driving directions, you're going to have the job card information. So that's kind of what we term the information there on the right-hand side of the map. So that's going to be your date and time for the service. That's going to be the customer's name, the job name, as well as a few other little bits of information. So one thing to make sure that we're taking note of here, when we're looking at the Android and the iOS versions, there's going to be a slight difference on how appointment times are going to work there. So for Android, you're going to have the date and the time for the appointment regardless of what day it's on. On the Apple side of things, you're going to have the appointment time if it is a current day job. So today's date's the 26th. So number 4 on my right-hand side is scheduled for today. Anything that falls before or after today's date is going to have its actual date listed for you on the iOS side. But outside of the basic appointment time information there at the top, you've also got a little bit of a colored flag situation going on as well. Those are going to be used in some situations by your office to indicate priority, severity, or just basically to get your attention out in the field. So let's say for the number 4 job on the iOS side there, we've got a red flag, so that in our database means that's an emergency service. We got to get out there as quickly as possible to get that fixed up for the customer. But outside of the little colored flags there, you're going to have your little black phone symbol inside of the colored flag. That is your indication to give the customer a call. They'd like you to call them before you pull up at their site, just so that they know you're on your way. So if you see one of those little symbols, that's going to be your cue to tap on the blue phone button at the bottom of your job card. And from inside of there, you're going to see the customer's name and the primary and alternate phone numbers that would be on file for them. So if you just see one primary number there, that's the only number we have on file. For phone users, so iPhone or Android phone users, you will be able to potentially call directly from this screen. Since we're using tablets today, we don't have those features available to us, but you can still use this to grab the number, call the customer, and once you've talked to them, if they're good with you coming out, you can go ahead and mark these jobs as confirmed. So what that'll do for you is it's going to put a little padlock in the place of the phone symbol and lock that in place on the schedule for the office, so they'll know that you have done that already. So when we do that, it'll do a quick little sync there. And we can see those little phones turn into padlocks. Outside of the details at the very top there, with your phone symbol and your confirmation flags, you're also going to have the name of the job, the primary contact at that job listed underneath of that job name, and then you're going to potentially see some notes or some job items. This information on the jobs to-do list or the completed jobs list is really just there for at-a-glance viewing. You're going to see all your details inside of the job once we go in and open it up. You've also got a few other little options there at the bottom of your job card. So the first one's going to be the ability to send out a quick email. So this is just a basic email functionality, and you'll want to talk to your office before you actually start to use this, because in some situations we don't need to contact the customer. It's really part of your office's process for you. So before you go in and start emailing out to customers, definitely check with them to make sure that they're okay with you doing that. But when you tap on the @ symbol, it'll just pop up a blank email draft with the customer's email in it, and then you can send that off to them. So if you can't make a phone call, for example, maybe you can shoot them an email and let them know you're on your way. And then the very last thing that we would have here on the main screen of iFleet is going to be our little magnifying glass. So that is what's going to open up our job so that we can go in and review that. And if you didn't want to use the magnifying glass there, you could also just tap anywhere in the job card section where we have text, and that'll do the same process and open that job for you.
All right, folks, so now that we've gone through the main jobs to do screen, let's go ahead and actually tap on that magnifying glass and open up this job here. Take a look at what we've got. So you see this view for both versions is pretty similar here. On the left-hand side of your screen, at least when you're using a tablet, you have your contact information for the customer and a couple extras. On the right-hand side of your screen, you have what's really the work order information, anything that you guys might want to change, where we want to put our job items, our notes, and a bunch of other stuff, things that you're used to writing down on paper or in your previous software. Now, we're going to go through these sides individually here in a moment. I did want to make a note for those of you who are using phones. Since a phone is a smaller screen, it's more compact, you're going to have different view of what you're seeing in here. So on a phone, the stuff that Jess and I have on the left-hand side of our screen is going to be set up in the top of your list. You basically on the phone have a list of these expandable headers. One of them is saying contact information, another one saying address. You're going to have those kind of things. If you expand those, you'll be able to see the same information that Jess and I are looking at here. You have all the same options, but like I said, smaller screen, so things have to be organized a little bit differently.
Yeah, and to just show one quick thing here on the Android side, you can already do that on the Android tablet, so you can expand and contract those fields as you need to. So that'll be how that works on the phone-style devices as well.
Exactly. So starting off with our top left-hand side here, and once again, this is stuff that you might use when you go out to a job. You don't have to start this way every single time. You'd, in truth, start on the right-hand side and work your way from there. But we want to go through this other stuff because it can go anywhere within the job. So starting at the top left-hand corner there, we have contact information for our customer. This will be the customer's name, phone number, and email address. If they have an alternate contact, you'll see that information there as well. Now, you notice that Jess and I have a pencil symbol up next to the contact information header there. That is because Jess and I have the permission from Smart Service to edit the customer's email address from the field. So if we were to tap on that pencil, that would go ahead and open up a prompt to let us edit that email. You may or may not have that on your device. The next thing we have down is the customer's addresses. Now, some of you may see both a service and billing address here. Some of you may just see a service address. The idea is the service address is where we're going to work today. So that's where we need to show up at to get this job done. The billing address, if you can see it, is just the customer's billing address. It's where you send the invoices. We don't want to drive to that billing address. Sometimes it's going to be different, especially if you're working with larger commercial customers. We don't want to drive to that billing address, so the office does have the option to hide it if we don't need it. But if you have it there to maybe verify their contact information or verify you're collecting payment from the right person, then you would see that stuff in here. Now, from inside this job here, on the Android side, if you were to tap on the service address, that would once again launch Google Maps and take you over to that job site. On the iOS version, we have a little arrow next to our service address. If you tap on that, that will also launch your mapping application and take you over to that job site. Now, the next section down we have after that, it's going to say this customer and job information. With this one here, the reason why this section is going to be probably different on our devices versus your devices is because this section changes depending on what customer you're working with. Now, for this example here, neither Jess nor myself have private notes, but sometimes you will see a private note on this section here, just a block of text. If you do see a block of text there, those are notes about that customer that the office sent you, but they will never display to the customer. They never show in any customer-facing documents. If there is something there, though, then there's probably something important going on with that customer, probably something we need to let you know about. Hey, watch out for the scary dog. Hey, this guy, writes bad checks. Someone take cash, if anything. So if you have a note there, you probably want to take a look at that, see what that note is all about there. We have a pencil symbol next to that one, of course, so we can contribute to that private notes section. Once again, yes, the customer will never see it, but your other technicians and your fellow office folks will see that information. So do be careful what you write in there. You don't want to vent too much, but if there's something that you think has to do with the safety of the other techs or something that we should know before we send out here, we need a taller ladder or something like that, put it in that private notes section there. It'll display on any job you guys do for that customer. And then below that, like I said here, Jess and I have some information about our customer, which will also change depending on your customer. But we can see this is a residential customer. We can see their terms of payment. We can see who their sales rep is. One big feature here is that job type and job description that we both have here. So I can see it's a service call. They have no cool. When you see those kind of things, that search bar that Jess was talking about previously on the Jobs to Do screen, that can search for the job type as well as the address and a couple other things. So this is a good way to figure out, where are all my service calls today. They're all labeled as service calls. You can also catch the label inside the job. And then finally, if you're generating invoice numbers from Smart Service, you'll also see an invoice number here as well, in case you need to hand that off to the customer.
And for the next section that we have in here, this is more specific information about this customer. So on both sides of our iFleet devices there, we've got a couple of new sections that we haven't looked at yet. So The very first one is going to be your customer fields. So customer fields are going to be basically static information about your customer, usually going to be site access information, special instructions, and things of that nature. So for this, you may be wanting to look just for the star there because your office staff could have relabeled the field here. So if you don't see My Customer Fields, just make sure you're looking for the star, and that'll help you get into the same section there. It's just going to be labeled differently. But when we go inside of our customer fields, it's going to show us what we have available from the office in terms of those different fields. So for this particular database, we've only got an access code. So if we had some sort of code that we needed to use to get into the job site, we can go ahead and enter that in here. If there is already information in here, this is going to be a window for you to update that information should you need to. So if there was nothing here and we get on site, we want to go ahead and get our information entered in there. And for the Android device, you do have a save button, so that is going to be really important. There's going to be a save button on the Android version, and on the iOS version, you're almost always going to just use the X button for that. Now, again, Android, always use your save. iOS, always use the X. So we'll go ahead and save that. And from there, the next piece of information that we're going to be able to look through is going to be your history information about the customer. So you could see potentially up to 30 previous visits worth of history in this section. When we go inside of there, there's going to be quite a bit of options that you're going to be able to use. Some of them may be available to you, some may not. But we'll go ahead and get into the history here. And once we get in there, again, we have a basic search functionality, just like we did on the main screen of iFleet there. And one thing that we can see here is it's got all of the dates and the amount of time we spent on the jobs there, if there was any time logged from the iFleet side of things. You've also got your statuses from the office. So was this a completed job, a skipped job, a canceled job? You can also see the name of that job. You can see who did the work and what they were going out there to do. So that's going to be your quick overview of all the history. You can also tap on each one of these history records, and it's going to open up whatever the details were for that history. So in here, we can see we didn't have any kind of job instructions there at the top or notes on the iOS side, but we did have a line item in there, so you'll be able to see that kind of information. So what were we going out here to do? What items did we use? Parts, materials, services, whatever you guys might have added that particular visit. And then we're going to go ahead and hit the back button in the top left-hand corner to get out of that history record when we're ready to. And something that we have on the iOS side that's not visible on my Android device is going to be those little blue folders. So this is the first place where you're going to be able to see Dropbox integration. So this is going to be where you would be able to pull up previous photos, previous forms, signed off documents from the customer, checklists, and things like that from doing your work previously. So for those, it'll be something that is potentially available to you, but you may not have access to it. If you don't see it, you might want to talk to your office and say, hey, we might be able to use this Dropbox integration stuff so that we can see previous visits information. For the office staff, if you're watching this, if you do set up Dropbox integration, you do not have to give the technicians access to anything. This is going to be strictly information that's related to this customer and potentially this job. So they're not going to be able to go in and look at anything else outside of what you guys have designated for these customers and these jobs. But I'll go ahead and hit the back button here on my Android side and the X on the iOS side. That'll take us back over to the section that we were looking at. And this next section is going to be the equipment information for this customer. So the things that we're going out there to do service work on. So that could be a rooftop unit, that could be a furnace, that could be a boiler, alarm systems, sprinkler control systems, you name it. Whatever your industry covers, if there's going to be something on site that you guys need to be able to keep model and serial numbers for, the locations of, general notes that are kind of separate from your regular job information, the equipment area is going to be where we do that at. So for this customer, we don't have anything on file for them yet. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that section by tapping on equipment. It's going to show us a blank screen. Again, you're going to have another search functionality in here. If you needed to use that when you got a long list of rooftop units for an HVAC company, sometimes you're going to be able to search for a unit in here and find it a little bit quicker so you can figure out what's going on with that particular unit. For this, when we're ready to create a piece of equipment, if the office hasn't done it for us, we're going to use the plus button. So when we tap that plus, it'll give us a blank equipment record to start building. So to start off inside of the equipment, you're going to start at the top and just work your way down. So you're going to have the item field. That's going to be the equipment itself. Most of the time what a customer is doing is basically just adding in a generic name, numbering that out. There is also the option to just select something out of the item list. But for that to be an effective method of handling your equipment, you need to have some specific things kind of set up in the item list from the QuickBooks side, which most customers aren't going to set up, 15 different kinds of air conditioning units for a customer. So speak with your office on how they want you to handle that part. If we wanted to just go in and name these, we can tap at the beginning of the item field, and then we can type in whatever we're going to call this. So just keep it simple here. Do RTU, switch to numbers, number 1. So we'll call this one RTU number 1. Nori's got his blower motor on his iOS device. So depending on how you guys want to handle this, you can break it down by the large components like Nori's doing here, or you can just do like a unit as itself. And then you can have different spaces inside of that unit to detail, what kind of blower motor it has, what kind of heat exchange it has, and all that stuff. But after we get our name in there, we would tap down into the description field if we want to add in some details about what this unit looks like, what its capacity is, what the manufacturer is. It's basically whatever you guys might need to have there. So we'll go ahead and do my Carrier rooftop unit. All right, now that we've got our description information in there, we'll go ahead and go on to our next field. So for the iOS users, you're just going to close out of your keyboard there, and then you can use your back button. For the Android users, you'll just keep kind of tapping down through the fields there. Android doesn't kind of take you into another window or anything like that for this section. The next option that you're going to have there is going to be your item status. So that's going to be, basically, is this installed? Is it being used? So when we tap in there, we'll see the options that we have available to us for this. In some situations, you may have the office flagging down broken units for you. So when you get out there on a job site, if you're doing a repair or a service, you might want to look in the equipment and see if anything's been flagged as a broken unit. Otherwise, it's going to be set up with, installed and in use if they're using it actively. If you haven't done the install work for it yet and the office added it in, you might see not installed. It really just depends on what the situation is. There's going to be a lot of situational stuff going on with iFleet here. But outside of your item status there, you're going to have your model and serial number information. A lot of times customers are setting these up as required fields. So if you're trying to enter this information in, and let's say you don't have your serial number, or you don't have a model number because the unit's old, the panel's all rusted out, it's just missing maybe, you can type in something like NA or not available, can't read, worn off, whatever you want to type in there, just something to convey over to the office that we tried to get the information, but it wasn't available to us. But if you do have the information, just go ahead and tap into your field there. Go ahead and label this something very generic since we're not actually working with a customer's equipment here. Now, you guys need to make sure that you're putting in the actual information. Double check it just to make sure that you don't have any kind of mistakes or anything like that in there, because if you do, we might have to handle that later on with the office there. The serial number field there, if you wanted to, you could just do something like NA, which is what I'm going to do for this one. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the next little piece here. So the next option is going to be the location option. So this is where this unit is actually stored on site. So utility room, basement, rooftop, whatever you want to put there. All you have to do is tap into the field and type in your information. So you can either do text, which I'm going to have Nori do here for us. So just type in wherever you want to put that unit at. And then for my side, on the Android side, I'm going to use the little pin at the end there, the little crosshair, to put in a GPS coordinate.
And one thing I did want to bring up too, depending on how you guys installed iFleet, there's a number of permissions that you can grant iFleet. We're kind of skipping over those for now because those have probably been set up by your office already on your devices the way you want them to. But if you guys want to make an adjustment to any of these, if you hit that pin symbol or that crosshairs and it doesn't do the GPS stamp like Jess's device there, you'd need to give iFleet access to your location. Once you give iFleet access to your location and the respective settings for your side, that's when you get the option to use that GPS stamp. Otherwise, you can type in something like basement, utility closet, or whatever you want, like I have.
Yeah, perfect. But if we keep moving along here, we've got our installation date and warranty expiration dates next. So those are just date picker fields. They work the exact same way. So if you're doing the installation work for this, or the customer tells you when it was installed, you can fill that information in. It'll pop up there for you, and you can go in and select whatever you need. So go ahead and say today, and then do the same down here in our warranty expiration. So the next section there that we have is our notes section for the equipment. So this is going to be your general information section about the equipment. So this will be where you store things like persistent issues, belts breaking constantly, fuses blowing, lines getting clogged in certain situations. So this will be a good spot to add that kind of information. It's going to kind of be separated from your normal stuff that you show your customer, and it'll keep a log here for everything that you guys have had going on for the next technician that comes out to this site. One very important note with these note sections throughout the entire application, you're going to have a timestamp option that you can utilize to show you did the note and when you did that. So that is going to be something that's very important. On the Android side, we can see that if we just tap into the field. Nori actually has to tap in there, and then it'll pop up at the top of his. When we're going in here, we need to make sure that we put in those timestamps. So you just tap your timestamp button there at the top, and that's going to put in your name, the date and time, and then from there you can start typing in whatever you might need. So persistent issues with the equipment and general notes about the equipment. So every time you go back out there, if you need to add more notes, put in another timestamp. That way we can keep that stuff all rolling and keep it all chronologically listed there. The next couple of fields that we have there are going to be for quantities and rates. So for the quantity, if you're working with a unit that has a unique serial number or unique model number, and you want to make sure that you don't cross any wires or anything like that, accidentally put information in on the wrong thing, we want to make sure that we are not only adjusting the naming convention we're using, so using a numbered naming convention, RTU number 1, and then we also want to put in a quantity of 1 here. That way, everything back at the office is just a 1-to-1 ratio. There's no confusion. We don't have 5 RTUs that have different serial numbers all listed together in one spot. But after we get that quantity sorted out, you're going to have your rate field there. That is usually going to be something that's filled in by your office. So as a technician, you guys can just jump over that section there. But underneath of those two fields, you've also got some user-defined fields for your equipment. So just like we had the customer fields, these are going to be your equipment fields. So if there's extra information that your office wants you guys to collect when you're doing service work and logging your equipment records, you'll see those as options in here underneath all of the general information up there at the top. So those fields, you just tap into them and type in whatever you might need. It's going to be based on whatever that field is. So for manufacturer, this is a carrier unit, so we can go ahead and put in carrier. And then filter sizes, you put in your dimensions for that, like Nori's doing there. So in terms of the information that we get logged in here, this is basically creating our list of equipment. So we're going to use this later on when we come out here and do work on these units to show that we actually did the work. So we're going to take a look at that once we get into our job items section here in a little while. But the last step inside of equipment is going to be making sure that we save it. So again, on the Android side, we want to use our save button up there in the top right-hand corner. And then for Nori, all he has to do is hit his equipment list button in the top left. And once we do that save, it's going to take us back to our list, and we can see that unit sitting in there. You can tap on that, open it back up, make it changes for whatever you might need there. And if you've done what I did and put in a GPS coordinate for the location of this, you can use the drop pin up there in the top corner of that equipment record on my side, or on Nori's side, you'll have that little arrow button there. That's going to take you over to your mapping application so that you can get walking directions back to that unit. All right, but now that we've got the equipment sorted out there, again, we're creating the list on the left there, and then if we take a quick peek over at the right-hand side, we can see that Add Equipment button. That's where we're going to be using that on the right to show that we've worked on this unit. So we'll come to that here in a little while. The next couple of sections that I have on my left-hand side there, they're going to be either infrequently used options, or they will have kind of a specific process that's going to be outlined by your office for you. So we won't be going too much into detail on those. But assets would be for companies that have, let's say, rentals. So portable toilets, dumpsters, shredding industry, bins and cabinets and things like that. So for those, there will be some extra documentation that you guys can take a look at for that. Since it isn't going to be something that the majority of the users are going to use, we're going to jump over that piece. And then for the purchase orders, the office is going to dictate whether or not you guys need to do those. And they'll have a set process for you on that. And most of the time, a technician's not going to be doing a quote out in the field, but there will be certain situations for that, and the office, again, is going to go over those steps with you. The very last thing that you have there on the left-hand side is going to be your assigned employees. So inside of there, you're going to have the list of the technicians that are assigned to this job with you. So we can see here there's a slight difference in terms of how it's displayed. So we can see on the Android side, we've got myself and Nori as the assigned employees. So we're like main technicians. We're the foremans, the boss on that job. And then we've got Morty Daniel down there. He is going to be, let's say, an apprentice or a helper. So this is basically just showing you who's supposed to be on this job site with you. But again, this is just a list of the employees that are supposed to be here on site with you. So if you notice that somebody's in the list but they haven't showed up to work yet, make sure that you leave a note there for the office. That way they know that they need to figure out where that guy went that day. But we'll go ahead and hit the back button on my Android device or the X on the iOS device. And then that is going to be where we jump over to the right-hand side of the screen to take a look at our next couple of steps. And this is where things actually start to kind of formulate into your normal day-to-day operations. Everything that we've covered so far is really just kind of overview and reviewing those sections so you know what to look for if you need to find something specific.
All right, so now that we've gone through the additional information that you can use anywhere within this job, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the right-hand side, which is going to be the actual process of using iFleet. So when you open up this job, let's say you open it from the Jobs to Do screen, you're probably going to take a look at the top right-hand corner of our screens where we have this time on Android or appointment time on iOS. This time value here is going to record the amount of time that you guys are on site. We probably want to put in travel time. We can put in times for when we're at the job site and a bunch of other options that I want to cover here. So first off, we're going to go ahead and tap under the time header where Jess's says no current status and mine says current status none. And if you tap here and you get a message about clocking in, it's because you haven't clocked in yet. You can go ahead and hit yes on that message. That would bring that up for you, let you clock in, get back to this window. But for those of us who have already clocked in here, we can go ahead and hit our first option, which is start traveling to job. So in a normal day-to-day process, we want to record this travel time, not only just for our sake so the office knows what we're up to here, but also so if the customer is supposed to get a notification at that point via text or email or something like that, which is a feature you can set up back in the office, the start traveling to job is the trigger to send that message to the customer, letting them know that a technician is on their way. So we'll go ahead and hit start traveling to job. And at this point here, we would go ahead and use our turn-by-turn directions from the left-hand side, help us get over to that address, or if you know where it is, we can go ahead and drive over there. But when we eventually arrive on the job site, we're going to go back into our current status, usually for the last time. So if we tap on that option again here, we now have a couple different features. So we have an arrived at job timestamp. You probably won't use that one very much. You'll most likely use the start job timestamp. The difference being we would arrive at the job, use that arrived at job timestamp if we're there, but we're not ready to begin yet. Let's say Jess gets there a little bit earlier than I do, and he's waiting on me to drive over and get there finally. He could go ahead and do arrived at job, wait till I'm there, and then hit start job with me. But if, let's say, we're in the truck together and we both get here at the same time, we could go ahead and hit the start job just to begin the job itself, and that'll also put in an arrived job timestamp for you. So we're going to go ahead and hit start job here. And at that point, let's say maybe you got to the job, we didn't put in a travel time or something like that, maybe we forgot. Going back into those timestamps, once again, gives us other options. So I want to talk about the pause job in a moment, but this additional time at the bottom here, this additional time option would be used to add any timestamp that, let's say, we don't want to use the normal buttons for. So if we go into the additional time option here, we can see we don't have any additional stamps yet. We'll both hit the plus at the top right-hand corner. That's going to open up this window here, and you see it'll let us adjust the times that we have in here. We could go ahead and put in another travel by changing this type here, and anything else we need to. We can also change the employee. You'll notice both of our names are displayed there, and we could change that to a different person if we need to put in times for, let's say like Morty that's with us on the job here. If he doesn't have his own device, we can add him ourselves. But I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. since we did our timestamps correctly, and we'll close out of this window here. The other timestamp I want to talk about, which tapping back on that timestamp we'll get to, is that pause job option. So this is a very helpful option if you need to pause the job, take a lunch. We need to pause the job, go help somebody else with something. Basically anything that is not you guys working on the job, but you intend to come back to it today, you can pause this job, and then that will turn into a resume timestamp later. So we could pause and resume as many times as we need to within a given day. But this brings up one very important portion that a lot of people get wrong their first time about iFleet, so I want to stress it now. Pause job is not meant to pause a job overnight. If, let's say, we go out there, we diagnose an issue, let's say, okay, their condenser is messed up and they're going to need a new one. Well, I don't have every condenser in the world on the truck, so I'll need to purchase one. And I'm going to come back with that maybe tomorrow or the next day. I don't want to pause the job until I come back. If you're finished with the job today, if you've done as much as you can today, we're always going to use the finalize job button at the bottom of our screen. The pause job is just for, like I said, stopping, taking a lunch, and then starting this job again. The job complete option will have another use here once we get down to the job item section in regards to your time on site. So most companies don't use that job complete button also. Only the finalize job button will actually mark the job as finished for the day, so that the office can send you another day or see your notes that, hey, we need to order, this motor, this compressor, or whatever the item is. So you don't want to pause or hit the job complete at the end of the day or the end of this job. We're always going to use the finalize job button no matter what, without any exception. Always finalize the job when you're done. But let's go ahead and get out of these timestamps here for now. And we'll continue down to our next section here, which is going to be job notes. So what this is going to be really is your scope of work. If Jess and I tap the pencil symbol next to job notes, it's going to display any notes from our office. Now, we can't change those notes from the office. We can take a look at them, see what's going on with this customer here. It looks like they're sitting about 86 degrees in their house, so pretty warm in there. And it looks like their maintenance department tried to do a fix, but they might not have known what they were doing. So they're going to send us out here. Now, for me to make a note on this section, we're going to tap the Add Notes at the bottom right of Android and the Add New Notes at the bottom right of iOS. This will open up our Notes window, and if we tap in this little square, it opens up our keyboard and also gives us the ability to timestamp. So with that being said, we always want to try to timestamp our notes. If I'm going out here, let's say tomorrow, or let's say I'm going to send Jess out here to finish up in a couple days, I want him to know what I did today. So that timestamp is really helpful, especially if you have ongoing jobs. You can see what was done on what day, and better yet, you can see when your note applies. So if you say, hey, next time we're out here, do this or that, I want to be able to show you when next time actually was. If we're out there a couple times after that, I don't want to keep doing the same thing. So definitely timestamp your notes. It's very helpful. In here, we could add some job notes. Hey, this is going on, that's going on, this is what I fixed. The most important part about this, though, is that on the default work order that is provided with iFleet, something we'll see towards the end here, this work order is sent to the customer, or can be sent to the customer. These notes do appear in that work order. Be very careful with that work order when you do send it, but just to avoid any mistakes that we might have, let's say you don't send it, but the office does next week or something like that, because the customer says they didn't get a copy. Always be polite, always be concise with this note section. This is all about scope of work. This is when you're basically describing to the customer why we're selling them these items or why a certain thing is happening. So you have the option to either type in your notes or, if you prefer, there's a microphone on your keyboard, and you could dictate notes to your device using that microphone. It'll type it out for you. I'm going to go ahead and put in some simple notes here.
And while he's doing some notes there, for those dictating to your device speech-to-text options, make sure that you're checking over those notes, because it's just a simple computer program. It's going to try to pick up what you're saying, but it may put something in there wrong. You don't want to have, nonsensical information put into those notes, because that's going to be something that your customer needs to read through potentially, or another technician. So if you use that option, make sure you go through and do a quick little proofread, make sure everything looks at least legible, and the person reading it next can understand what you're trying to get through to them.
Absolutely. All right, and then when we're done with these notes, once again, remember, Android folks, you have that save button at the top right-hand corner. You need to be hitting that save button whenever you can to save your options. Your arrow there on the left will basically cancel your notes, so you want to be careful with that. So Jess will hit save. Us in iOS, we're going to hit the X at the top left, which will also add our notes to the job. So you can see our notes displayed in both sections there. And now we come to a time where we need to sell this customer something, and we'll do that with our job items section. So under job items here, we both have a plus symbol. If we go ahead and tap on that symbol there, it'll bring up our item window. It's blank, of course. It's going to ask us what item do you want to add. Now, you cannot create your own items from the field. We do select from the list provided by your company's QuickBooks profile. So when you tap on this top bar here for item, it's going to bring up all of your items, and I encourage you to use the search by keyword option at the top there. You can, of course, scroll through the list as well if you prefer, but Jess and I are going to go ahead and pick out items for our jobs. So we get our items on here, and of course we can make some adjustments to the information on those items. Now, if we look at our options here, we have a thing for quantity. So if we need to give a couple of these filters or a couple of those blower motors or whatever you need to do, you can, of course, adjust the quantity options there. The start timer and end timer, that is to track your time on a job. We do have a better way of doing that nowadays. This is kind of a legacy feature for other customers that have been using the software for a while. So I'll show you the better way to handle that. Now, for our devices as well, you might notice a difference in our pricing and whether or not you can see quantities in general. Those settings are controlled by your office. They have several different things that they might show us if we need to see pricing, if we don't need to see pricing, if we need to change quantities, if we don't. So I'll leave that up to your office employees, but your window and your options may be different. You might not see costs, you might not see pricing, you might not see quantities. The only other thing I want to talk about in this window for right now here is going to be this one-time item box at the very bottom. So if you're working on a job that's going to be more like a preventative maintenance, it's like a quarterly filter change or something where we're going to be doing it on a recurring schedule. Generally, those items that you're going to be charging for, like this filter, for example, are probably going to be put on the job by the office for you. All you got to do is go out there and install it. The system will handle charging the customer. But if we add an item that's like a one-off thing, for example, like let's say I go out there to change this filter, and just noticed they need a blower motor, so he adds that to the job. He can mark that as a one-time item. And that one-time item will tell Smart Service, hey, only charge them for that blower motor today. Don't charge them for another blower motor on their next quarterly service from us. So it doesn't really matter if the job's scheduled for just one day. It's just a simple go out, diagnose, and repair. Does matter quite a bit if you have a preventative maintenance with set line items that you usually charge for. You can add a one-off item to your job without needing a whole separate work order. Just make sure to mark it as a one-time item. That way the customer doesn't get a recurring charge for whatever item you added. Now, once again, to save our items here, Jess is going to hit the save button in the top right, and I'm going to hit the X in the top left. It's going to get our item added to the job, and that's a pretty basic way to add an item. I do want to go through some of these other options, though, that we have under the job item section. So we will both have a couple features here. You have an add equipment, add assets, and add time charges. The add equipment button will do very similar to what we saw here earlier with the filter and the blower motor, but it'll let us add those items to a specific piece of equipment. That's really helpful when you're trying to track a service history for a piece of equipment. If we tap the add equipment button here, it'll show us any equipment that we have, and we got two lines under that equipment. If we use the top line, tap in there, we can choose an item. And in the second line, we can add a quantity. So how many of that item. And once we get this here, we can hit save at the top right of Android or done at the top right of iOS there. And not only will that add that item to the job, you notice it did something a little bit different from the first time I added the filter, the first time Jess added the blower motor there. It brought in that equipment's information. So now you can see what specifically happened with that piece of equipment. You can see all that information in there. Another thing that now that we've kind of covered all the equipment options available in iFleet that I wanted to talk about was when you do this, it does bring in that model and serial number, as we can see here. And the really nice thing about that is if Jess and I go back to history, we both have this barcode scanner at the top right-hand corner. And if we were to tap on that barcode scanner, it would open up your camera and let you guys go ahead and scan in a barcode. It'll find all relevant history records for that piece of equipment. Now that only works if you did the add equipment feature like we just did with the line item, because that's what brings in the model and serial into the items, and since the items are part of the history, it all works together. So you could tap that, or you could use the search bar if maybe it doesn't have a barcode, but you got a model number. You could type in that model number or serial number into that search field. Now, the add assets functionality there, that is, like I said, or like Jess said earlier, for rental equipment. So if we're going to be renting an item to a customer, we'd go ahead and use that function. I'm going to skip that one for now. And then the add time charges feature, well, we're not done with this job yet. In order to use the add time charges feature, we have to have the job complete timestamp I mentioned earlier on the job. We'd then hit add time charges, bill for our time, and then finalize the job. Now, if you tap on it now, you're going to get this message here telling you exactly that. So we'd have to finish the job first. So we'll circle back to that one here in a moment and talk about how to add labor and stuff like that right before we finalize this job.
All right, so for the next couple of things after our job item section that we're going to be using there on a case-by-case basis, really, we're going to have our job fields. So you may have some options here, you may not. It just kind of depends on what you guys have set up at the office side. But your job fields are going to be a spot for you as a technician to maybe leave a note about something that came up on this job. So maybe we need to go back out. We can see there we've got a return required. So in order to modify these, just like what we had with several other sections of the program, you're going to tap on your pencil icon. That's going to bring up the screen that lets you do your data entry for this. So we can go ahead and say, yes, we need to go back out. And then you could also, in this case, update contact information if needed. But if you just need to go back out, you can say yes. If there's an extra field in there for a reason, you can fill that information out. For our setup here, we're going to be using the job exceptions to kind of indicate why we need to go back out. So this is basically just a yes so that we know that this is going to be happening. So after you've added the information on the Android device, you'll hit save. On the iOS, you'll hit your X button in the top left. That'll take you back, and you can see in that field you've got your information sitting in there. So we need to go back out. So we need to use our job exceptions to flag down the office. So we've put in a note in our job fields, but that job exception is essentially like you throw in a red flag in front of the dispatcher or whoever processes your jobs for you after you do them. So again, tap on your pencil icon. That'll give you a list of the options that the office has set up for you. So if you see something in here that you want to use, you'd grab it out of the list. If there's something that you need to have added in here, definitely touch base with your office staff. Let them know that you need an extra option in there. But let's say for this example, we need some parts, so we can go ahead and do that parts required option. That'll select that and put that into our job exceptions section there. Outside of your job exceptions there, those job exceptions and job fields probably going to come more closely to the end of the job after you've kind of wrapped everything up and you're just getting everything together for the customer there. The next section for photos, this is something that can happen kind of at any point in time during your job there. So if you need to add any photos, so you need to take a picture of the before and after situation, this is where you're going to do that. When you add these photos here, when you do your sync from the main screen after you finish your job, it'll send those photos back to the office for you. In this section, you've also got a cap of 25 photos. So remember that if you hit the 25 photos there, you're going to hit your back button and then hit your sync button on the main screen. So back button in the top left-hand corner there. When you hit that sync, it'll offload those images for you. It'll prompt you and say, hey, you've got 25 photos. Would you like to send them back to the office? Say yes or no, based on whether or not you've got a connection to the internet there. Once you pop back into your job, it'll be a blank section there for you to work out of. So just like with our other options where we've got the little pencil icon, that's how you're going to add those photos. So we'll tap that pencil again. And for my Android device here, I'm getting a prompt to allow me to let iFleet use my camera app. So you may see these pop up there. After you set them to allow, you shouldn't see it pop up again, but if you're ever going to need to take photos or anything, you have to make sure you do the allow. Otherwise, you have to go into the actual settings for the device and change the settings there. So when you see these prompts come up, just take a moment, read through them, say allow, and then that'll let you get in here. So for the Android device, we've got a little plus button up in the top right-hand corner. For the Apple device, I've got a camera icon up there in the top right-hand corner. So we're going to tap on those. And then it's going to prompt us to choose how we want to, grab this picture. So you've got two options. The first option is going to be camera or take photo. That's essentially taking the picture through iFleet. So it'll add it directly into iFleet. If we choose the files or choose from library, that means we took the photo outside of iFleet and we're going to import them into the app itself. So depending on what you've done, you go ahead and select the option. For us, we're going to go ahead and do the take photo or camera option. And we'll get a picture of our soundboard here on my side. It looks like Nori might have got a little permission request there. It'll give you a preview of the picture that you've taken. On the Android side, you'll have to hit the retry or OK. Retry if it's a blurry picture and you want to retry that again. OK if you're good with that picture. But it'll take it in here. It'll add it in. You can see some thumbnails. And then up there at the top, we have the date and time that we actually took this photo. So that field, you can actually tap in there, and you can write in, before, after, whatever you're taking a picture of. So I'll go ahead and say soundboard. And then you've also got your option just below that, no associated equipment. So if you tap there, that'll actually let you go in and tag this piece of equipment that this is a photo of. So if we needed to take a picture before and after the install, we could do it this way. And then when we do that, that's actually going to store that information. We'll be able to recall these photos from the equipment record section once we get that next job for this particular customer. But if you need to take more photos, just go ahead and keep hitting your plus or your camera icon up there in the top right corner, and it'll keep taking pictures, again, up to that 25 photo cap. If you need to remove a photo, maybe you took a bad one, you can use the little trash can icons that we see on the sides of the screen there. But after you've taken all your photos, or the photos that you need for right now, you can go ahead and either hit the back button in the top left-hand corner of the Android device or the X on the iOS device there. When we do that, that'll show us the thumbnail of that photo in our photos section so that we can see what we've taken pictures of so far. After we add that, there was something that we had kind of left off on. So basically, you're going to work your way all the way down to your finalize job button. And at this point, if we are going to be using the add time charges option there, we would need to put in our final timestamp. So as Nori mentioned, regardless of whether or not you're doing this, you are finalizing the job. You finalize the job every time you go into it and you start putting in times and information. That finalize is what sends everything back to your office. If we scroll back up to the top here and we go back into our time options, underneath the appointment time or our time there on the Android, we're going to use that job complete stamp. So we can see we've already had some timestamps getting accrued here. When we do that job complete, that is now going to let us go in here and do our add time charges. So if you recall, we had a little prompt that came up that said we didn't have our information in yet for the end timestamp when we tried to do that last time. So now it's going to pop up and let us add whatever times we might need to add here. So you're going to go down through your list, select the items that you want to use. So if you wanted to show all of this labor and all this travel information to the customer on their invoice, we'd select those. And at this point, you can either hit done and add 4 different line items there, or you can use the option at the very bottom to combine the service items together. So for things like my labor options here, those are all going to be grouped together under that labor item with a quantity representing how long we actually spent on the site. And then we'll have one other extra item for a trip charge. So if you want to have everything kind of condensed into neat little items there, go ahead and hit your done. And that's going to take those 2 time charges and put them in there as line items for us. So we can see it automatically flags those as one-time charges. So if this is like one of your reoccurring jobs, you won't have to worry about going in and changing that option. But once you've done that, if we needed to, let's say, round up to the nearest 15-minute intervals for billing purposes, we can actually tap into these. As long as you've got access to your quantity field, you can go in there and you can modify that information. So we tap in there, put that up to a 3/4 of an hour, save, and do the same down here for our travel time. And then save again. And then from the office, they'll also have these same kind of functionality. So if this is something that they're going to handle for you, they'll let you know, and they can make their adjustments as they need to.
And then our last step on this job here today is going to be to finalize the job. Now, before we finalize the job, I did want to make note of a couple extra features that are available on both Android and iOS. We usually don't go over these kind of things in things like the Quick Start Guide just because they are additional features that not everyone will have access to. But you do have the option to get a Dropbox integration section and a collect payment section. The Dropbox integration section, you'll see a little header that says View Dropbox Files in there, and it will show you any photos attached to the customer and any photos attached to this job. The customer photos are super helpful if you have pictures of the unit or something like that, or they need to be labeled. Maybe they're fairly similar and it's hard to tell which one's which. Well, you could view photos taken on that customer. The job photos are very helpful if we're on a longer install and we want to see kind of the photos of the project, as it's been going along each phase. We could go in there and see anything that's in this jobs portfolio, basically. The payment options are something different. So the payment options would be if you are collecting payment out in the field. With the standard arrangement available in Smart Service, you have the option to collect payment in the field using a check, cash, or whatever you have. But if you want to do credit card processing, then you do need to speak to us about getting our merchant service. That way you guys can do the credit cards. With the other version of things, you can't store a credit card number in iFleet without having our merchant service, so don't do that. But if that's something your company is interested in, contact us. We can get that set up for you. But if we're done looking at everything in iFleet here, the last thing we want to do before we finalize also is just take a look over our job, make sure everything's good. We got our items, we got our notes, we got our labor on there, so that should be good enough for today. We've told our office that, hey, we need to come back with, XYZ part or whatever it may be. At this point, we're going to go ahead and hit the Finalize Job button. Before I do that, though, I did want to make mention that you might see something different on your device. Your office has the option to add your own customized work order to this, so we're going to use the standardized Finalize Job prompts, which is going to help us show terms and conditions, collect the customer's signature, and all that. But you might show up with a different work order, something like that, or some other documentation you need to fill out at this point. So now we're going to go ahead and actually hit Finalize Job. It's going to display terms and conditions. If our customer is available, we would have them hit I agree. If the customer is not available, you still have to hit I agree just to clear this section to make it through. So we'll go ahead and hit that. It's going to bring up this option here. If the customer is available, we can go ahead and have them assign. On iOS, and I'll have Jess go ahead and sign his first, he can tap in this bar, which will open full screen, and let him go ahead and get a signature. On my iOS tablet, I have to go ahead and sign in that little box there. So we go ahead and get our customer's signature. They could write in the sign by field if you want to note who signed it. So come in here and type in our names. And then once we're done, we can tap the I agree. This information is correct at the bottom. Now, once again, here you might see some other screens in between where Jess and I are now. After you hit that I agree, this information is correct. If you had any fillable PDF forms, which your company will instruct you how to fill out and use, because those are dependent on pretty much personal settings of what you guys as a company do. You might see a prompt there of, do you want to send the forms to the customer? There's also a thing that can show up called an attachment. That's like a flyer or, a little form that we want to send to the customer that's just kind of a flattened document. It might also ask you about that, but eventually you'll get to this screen here, which is, what do you want to do with these documents now? Regardless of what we choose, this information is going back to the office either way, but this is purely in regards to what does the customer see. Now, if you hit the open action there, it would open up that document, and you could send that to a mobile printer or something like that if you have it. iOS actually has a special button just for printing, so you can hit that print button there. It'll use its own protocols to do that. Generally, though, people are going to be hitting either the email or do nothing options. Do nothing just means send it back to the office. We don't need to do anything for the customer. Email would open up the default email account on your device and allow you to send this to the customer. Of course, you can make modifications to what the email says and all that. But I'm going to go ahead and have us hit do nothing this time. We're going to say we don't need to send this to the customer. And then that's going to return us to our jobs to do screen. It's going to synchronize, kick that job off. Now, Jess has the photo prompt here. If I hit my sync button, I'll get that same photo prompt. And basically, it's asking us, what do you want to do with this photo? Do you want to send it back now, or do you want to send it back later? Like we said, you might encounter this if you hit that 25 photo limit. Come in here to sync, it's going to want to send those back. You don't have to do it right now. The idea basically behind us asking is, one, are you in a good area to send a bunch of photos? Because as you guys know from personal life, sending a photo over a phone, if you send 4 or 5, takes a while. Try when you got like 50 on here, right? It's going to take a few minutes for that device to process. Maybe we need our device right now, or we're not in an area with very good signal. So you can hit no on this prompt. If you do hit no, the next time you sync, it'll ask you again, and it'll keep asking you, and you can hold it off until you're back under Wi-Fi, or you can set your device down. Or we're going to go ahead and hit yes now to transfer our photo back to the office. And for our last note here, I wanted to point out that if you made a mistake on your job and you need to go back into the job to do something, remember, you can open up your menu in the Jobs to Do screen here. And you can get over to that completed job section. You notice we both have one completed job now. If we tap on that option, it'll take us to that job we were just on. And of course, you're free to open that up, make further adjustments, refinalize if needed. So if you mess up something, not a big deal. You can always get it fixed up here, or just, send a text message to the office. Let them know, hey, I forgot this or that. We can always make adjustments back to the office to anything that you guys add in here. Our last thing today here is going to be to go ahead and clock out for the day. So if we open up the menu at the top there, we can go ahead and hit the clock out button to end our day, or if you need to take a lunch or whatever you need to do next. But we're going to go ahead and clock out since we're towards the end of the video. All right, and our information's all sent back to the office, so Jess and I can get paid for our work here today. All of your information sent back, your photos, any documentation. You filled out a copy of that PDF form with the customer's signature on it. So thanks for coming to our iFleet class, folks. If you have any questions, please give our support team a call at 888-518-0818. Ask us any questions you need. That does include your technician, so if they have questions about what they've seen in this video or about a certain feature, definitely give us a ring. We'd love to help you. But thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one.